Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Bites. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons.
All right, today my guest is Jo Hendy, and I'm going to read the bio that she sent me. Right from being a young girl, I've been pushing and pulling at life. I've had some really crazy fun experiences, and I've also been on the other end of some not so nice experiences too. Let's just say that if you asked one of my teenage girlfriends what type of human I was growing up, they would most definitely say I was the crazy cat that their parents probably didn't want them hanging out with. But I had this unique way of people loving my adventurous, no fear attitude towards life. I've studied and still study in the area of personal development. Over the last 15 years, I've run my program called the Sacred Sister Project in schools, a mindful, holistic program around educating girls that they are much more than what they see in the mirror. I hold a diploma in holistic counselling, specialising in supporting females. I've travelled the world, have 2 amazing adult children, and 2 incredible bonus children. I've been in a relationship with my husband for over 20 years, and we now both dedicate our lives to assisting others in living their best lives. I know deep within that we are not the person we think we are. We are way more powerful, and we have much more love to give and gain from stepping into this power. This is not something that happens easily, and I'm under no illusion that it's an easy journey. In saying that, I love guiding the girls onto a less painful path that they can find joy and reassurance along the way. Jo, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, Doug, you read that so beautifully. It felt like you were reading about somebody else. Oh, that's really, really lovely. Thank you.
Well, you wrote it beautifully. Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Now, you've got your own podcast, and I've listened to probably 95% of the episodes. But something on there that I really haven't learnt much about, that I really want to talk about straight up, is the Sacred Sister program.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Because I've got a 10-year-old granddaughter.
Okay,
and so how these girls grow up is very important to me. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, I run the program in schools, and it's right at that age of your granddaughter. So it's grade 5, grade 6, year 7 and year 8. So it's the real pivotal age where, hormones are kicking in. Let's throw in social media. So many elements around that age that are so significant in the shift of them being a young girl who still loves to play, have fun, not care too much about their body or their image or whatever, and then flipping into that whole area of that body image. They're getting their periods, the hormones are kicking in, and life is going to change. We know that. That's inevitable. So I go into the schools and I give them holistic practices around their negative mindset, around that their body is absolutely perfect the way it is. We're all completely different, but we're also very much the same in the way we think. And it's so beautiful. I love it. And we talk about the moon cycle. So it's a lot of different elements that we bring in that aren't being taught to these young girls. And that some people would say a little woo-woo, but I believe that they're all part of who we are on a being level, not so much a human level, but I use words that fit into the school curriculum.
Right, okay, you adapt it. And is it in private schools, government schools?
It's everywhere, yeah. Okay. Yes, I work some private schools, a lot of public schools. Then I've even started working at the village school, which is down in Coolangatta, which is almost like a co-ed school that's been born through COVID.
Right.
Yes.
Interesting.
Which is really beautiful. So, a lot of big Brisbane schools, big private schools in Brisbane, right down to the village school, which is I love it. Yeah.
Excellent. And so it's sort of you try and get with the girls just once a year, or?
Yeah, so the program runs for 4 weeks. So I go into the school usually at the start or at the end of the year. I prefer the start because I like to kind of give them something that they can take with them throughout the whole year. And I suppose a lot of the things that I'm teaching them, they'll take through for the rest of their life. There is one process that we run, it's called the Itty Bitty Pity Committee, and it's about the mean girl that lives inside of us and the goddess, and how we need to observe more the mean girl and what she says to us and not believe that she's us, and then the goddess who is us. And I just think that those, I mean, for anyone in life, not just girls, for men as well, we all have this negative self-talk that constantly runs, that tells us we're not good enough, or we can't do that, or don't do that, or, you know, which takes us away from our truth, which is our goddess, or for a man, our master. Yeah.
So is that something you do on your own, or have you got...
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, I've been doing it on my own for, I think, since 2015.
Wow.
And yeah, it's one of those things that it's growing, and I will need to start to look at bringing people in. But it's also it's like my baby. So it's, I'm getting lessons around letting go and trusting that the right people will come in and teach it the way that I teach it.
Yeah, no, I get that. No, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. And I'll ask you after the podcast, like, if you attend this particular school that my granddaughter goes to, and I would hope, fingers crossed, he's open.
Beautiful.
All right. So now your podcast that you started, and you've got like 40 or 50 episodes out there.
Yeah.
2 questions on that. Like, what made you decide to start it, and why the name Girl Awakening?
Oh, that's so beautiful. Beautiful question. So Amanda Parker, who is my co-host, or my host, I should say, we're a team. We walk every morning. So we do a 6K walk, the two of us, and we get coffee and we sit, and we usually do a meditation on the beach, watch the sunrise, and it's really beautiful. And we've been doing this for a long time. And I had this thought one day, we should do a podcast. And she said, yes. And she got super excited. She's like right with me. And then it just didn't happen for about 6 months. I was like, I think I put it out there, and then I kind of shat my pants and was like, I don't know whether I want to do that anymore. And she's so wonderful with just giving me space. So she just left it and didn't say anything. And then I think 6 months later, I woke up one morning and I was just like, I'm ready. And so we sat on the beach and I said, I'm ready. And she was like, oh, fantastic, right there with me again.
Good.
And I said, and I think I had this meditation. I did this meditation, and I was like, kind of always asking, just give me a sign of this or that or this or that. And then in this meditation, I had the thought of Girl Awakening, because I felt like there are so many people, and especially over the last 24 months, there are so many people that are questioning, and their awareness is, expanding, and they're asking questions around what's happening to me, or, So I was like, Girl Awakening, and let's ask women, what their awakening was like, or when did it start, how did it start, blah, 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 blah. And we got so excited. So we put it out to all the women that we've either done a session with, had some kind of work with, or that we knew. And we just got yeses, like flying in the door. It was like, so we knew that we were onto something. And it birthed, and it's just literally taken off, and we love it. And we're at the stage now where we're finding that women come in and we sit with them and we share the space, and we all 3 of us usually go on a journey in the podcast, and then there's an activation that happens within the space that whoever we're doing the podcast with either leaves and changes their whole direction in life, or it activates something in them to start something new, or it activates just something in them that's more inspired to go further and with what they're doing. And then the same thing happens for Amanda and I. We just feel so blessed to have these amazing women in the space. And we've had one man, Trev, come and sit in the space, and it activates something in us too. And there's no money involved, yet I feel the most fulfilled doing that than anything I've probably done other than my sacred sister. I feel so fulfilled, and every time I go into that space, and then when I leave, I leave like learning something, walking away feeling more love for myself and others, and just feeling like my cup is a little fuller.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. And so on your podcast, there's a question that you always ask people. And I've learned a lot about you listening to the podcast, but I've never heard you talk about this bit.
Okay.
So, Jo...
I'm nervous.
Well, you're very familiar with the question. When did your awakening begin?
Wow. That's, once again, a really good question. And, I could go way back to, as a young girl. I grew up in a small town in Wonthaggi, Victoria. Great family, close family. But I suppose I was always wanting more. And hindsight, like I've learnt through other women telling their story, is a funny thing, because we can always look back and go, oh, there was a moment there was a moment there. But in the moment, we don't see it. So I was always probably the girl, the crazy cat, that was always wanting more out of life. I was always, and in saying that, it's funny, I'll go back to the Sacred Sister Project too. The reason why I started that is because I'd had some experiences in life, and it wasn't the victim, I was the bully. And a lot of people, when I say that, I think they feel a little bit confronted by that. But I realised that, hurt people hurt people. And for me growing up, I didn't care about the person that was in my way. I was like, get out of my way, I'm coming through kind of thing, really unaware of the effect I was having on others, and not realising this until later in life. So I suppose growing up, I was like that. I was just gung-ho, on to the next thing, not really having any awareness of the effects I was having on others. And not because I'm inherently a mean person, but I think I'd had some experiences when I was younger that I shouldn't have had. I was sexually abused when I was younger. I don't really need to go down that path. But a lot of forgiveness and healing has been done over that. But I also learnt a lot about myself and why that happened, and why that happened for me, not necessarily to me. So I realised that's why, part of the reason why I was hurting others and really not giving a damn about who was in my way. I had like a reason for, or whatever I thought was the reason, to hurt people. Anyway, moving on, I moved away on the day after my 21st. I decided that I was either going to go to WA or I was going to come to the Gold Coast. And my brother had a best mate that lived on the Gold Coast. So I was like, great, I know one person. So I moved to the Gold Coast the day after my 21st. And my life changed, because the Gold Coast is such a big place, and I had such a big personality, although when I arrived, I felt quite small. And I happened to move in with, back then, some people might know, like the cheetah swimwear. So she was like the cheetah model. And so when I knocked on the door of this house I was going to live at, this beautiful girl with long blonde hair answered the door. And I was like, oh, wow, blown away. And anyway, the partying and all that started. So I've kind of felt like I found my tribe. A lot of partying, not much work, a lot of Centrelink, kind of, I thought I was doing good and not even realising that I was like so off track. Anyway, fast forward a few years, bad relationship, and then all of a sudden I met Trev. And that's when my awakening began. If there was a certain point that I could say, I even remember sitting, and it's funny, I was stoned because I loved smoking pot. And I was with a girlfriend, we're in the lounge room, we were both stoned, hiding it from him because we thought he's this sports guy, and he started sharing all this stuff, like this woo-woo stuff. And we were loving it because we were stoned. And it was like, oh my God, this guy's incredible, started sharing this stuff. But it lit something in me, because all of a sudden I was like, oh, I don't really need to get stoned, or I don't need these other things to make me feel like there's more, because I've got this man that's telling me this stuff that's really interesting, and it's really igniting something in me. So yeah, that's probably where my awakening began, and I realized there was a lot of things that I needed to tidy up that weren't who I was and weren't integral to me moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like, because he was so, I don't want to say straight, but straight to me back then. Like he'd never touched drugs. He never smoked. I was a smoker, a closet smoker back then. I loved to party. And, he didn't mind to drink and a party, but probably not in the same context as me.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it began. And then, when Trev and I moved in together and things started to get serious, that's when he said to me, I'm doing this work. It's with this company, this it was called Freedom Potentials back then. They don't exist anymore. Would you like to come along and do a weekend? And I was like, yeah, why not? So we started doing this work, and Trev had a mentor, Colin Brown, and I fell in love with him. He was a man from New Zealand who's passed on to do bigger things now on the other side. But he was a man that just held such an amazing space and had a vision of where he wanted to love and support other humans to come out of their games and the energy fields and the negative self-talk and take more self-responsibility. So that's where, it really took off for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So that hooking up with Trevor.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. That was my awakening. I always think, what if I never met him, where would I be? It scares me. I'm hoping that, my beingness would have been loud enough and I would have listened to get off that train that I was on, because I was looking for things in all the wrong places.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Something you said earlier, you're talking about things as you grew up, and you mentioned the phrase, things happening for you, not to you.
Yeah.
And I've heard that before, but I'd just like you to maybe share a little more of exactly what you mean there.
Yeah. Well, that's something that's really been a great tool for me, probably only in the last few years. Previously I probably would have liked to have played the victim or used that to blame others, and not look at how I've created something or why something has happened. But I'm a big believer now that absolutely everything happens for us. And, there's other levels to that too. We look at things are happening to us, and then things are happening for us. Things are happening through us, and then things are happening by us. And I'm not quite there yet, but, it's a beautiful, little tool to fall back on whenever you think life's, at you, or life is hard. It's like, no, it's all perfect. And if you can just look at this as happening for you for whatever reason, and just be patient and take a few deep breaths and slow down, that the lesson will come. The lesson will show itself when it's ready.
It can be a bit of a long-term thing.
It can be.
Realising it was for you.
It doesn't happen overnight, and it's not. It's something that I still have to work on. I still get challenged, and I still find myself not wanting to look at that phrase. I'm like resisting it, and then all it does is create more chaos. So it's like, I'm learning to look at that as if everything's happening for me. Everything is happening for me. Yeah.
Something else you mentioned there too about when you were growing up, probably those teenage years, you were the mean girl. And when was it that you realised, like when did that awakening occur for you to realise that back then you were being mean? Was that not long after it, or many years later?
Many years later, yeah. Yeah. I think I had this sense of that I wasn't being the best version of me at the time. I think we do inherently know that when we're doing something that's not quite right.
Yeah.
But whether we want to change it in the moment, or whether we go, I can't be bothered, or I don't want to look at that. We might want to suppress it, which for me it was, I want to suppress it. I don't want to look at it. I already think, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at that I'm mean as well, And I suppose that's something that throughout my life too is one of those negative mindsets that pops up every now and again that, oh, you're being mean, you're mean, and it's like, no, I'm not. I'm not mean. It's an energy field that wants to play with me to keep me somewhere. And it's like, no, I need to let go of that. I need to look at that, work out what is it that I'm doing that still has that energy in there. And then, be able to keep working on turning that around. But, I didn't do, there were some things that I remember, and it's probably really something that happens to a lot of people. Like I remember stealing in my younger years, not stealing, I shouldn't even say stealing. It was like my best friend had a crush on this guy and I went out with him.
Yeah.
Like, and that was just like, well, no big deal. But it actually really was a big deal.
Now you look back at it.
Now I look back at that, I think she could have created some kind of fictional story around that, but she may have taken that. She may not have. I don't know. I'm hoping she hasn't. But, we create these energies or these stories around things that happen like that. Or even like for me, it might have been, for instance, and this could be part of that story too, a lot of men cheat on me throughout all my relationships. And I'm thinking, I used to then think that's probably payback for me doing that, possibly, I don't know. But it's like until you can work it out within and take some responsibility, all responsibility for that, we'll never let go of that energy and be able to move on. We actually have to face it at some stage and go, okay, well, and part of that, me saying, yeah, I was the mean girl, I was the bully, is me facing that and going, I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to learn from her, and I want to be able to probably show other girls it doesn't work out the way you think it's going to work.
Yeah.
Having power over people is not a good thing.
No.
Having control over people is not a good thing. It may feel a little good in the moment, but it's not going to last.
No, having power over yourself's very difficult.
Yes.
And then realising that. Yeah, and I know through meditation once I had something happen when I was a teenager, and I just went into a meditative state and asked the question, like, why did that happen? And it just came to me. There was a particular time, probably 6 to 12 months before that, where I joined in with a group of boys at school and bullied this other boy.
Yeah.
And this other boy, I can still see him looking at me, because I wasn't normally the bully.
Yeah.
He looked at me, and he was always very quiet, passive, and he just looked me in the eye and he said, what have I ever done to you?
It's full on, isn't it?
And it was like, whoa. Yeah. I mean, at the time, it got me to stop. But I realised years later, like in the last 5 years, that the other event occurred because of me joining in and bullying him and he wasn't even doing it. He was just, because he was quiet and passive, someone decided to pick on him, and I joined in. Yeah.
The peer pressure thing, it's and that's, part of the Sacred Sister Project that I love to talk about, is like this thing about being unique. We've become a world where we have to group up and be the same. And it's like, no, you don't win that way, No.
Yeah.
We need to be you.
Yeah, being unique and being happy with that and being proud that you are actually unique. I mean, it's a tough one at the time because you do stand out. You're not part of the crowd. Yeah. And I always found that growing up, I was just never part of the crowd. I was the guy who didn't get the invitation to the birthday party, and the birthday boy said, "Oh, you were 11th on the list, and Mum only let me invite 10."
Oh, that's so heart-wrenching.
It's like, the only one in the group to not get handed an invitation, things like, and that, I guess, so that encourages you to join in with the bully.
Absolutely.
Because you want to be
you want to be
a
part of it. Yeah. You want to be connected, and that, as a being, we want to be connected, but what part, where does the line get drawn in the sand? Are we going to be negative, or are we going to just stay true to who we are and be okay to be alone for a while? Yeah.
And that's one of the many reasons that I've chosen to sort of help men develop their intuition, like to start to realise things like that, because it's helped me realise that there are times in my life when I'm not that nice.
Yeah.
But I don't realise it.
Yeah.
And now I'm starting to, it's enlightening me, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, if I can help other men be nicer, the world will be nicer in general, because we're all realising what's naughty and what's nice. So we all get on the Santa's good list,
No, it makes sense.
Yeah. So to ask you another question that you ask a lot of people.
Yeah.
Have you had to give up anything as you started to awaken?
Oh,
the closet smoking, for one?
Yeah. Yes. All the bad things. In truth, a lot of bad things. But I think that was natural. That was going to happen.
Yeah.
Just my higher self was like, we're getting rid of this, we're getting rid of that, we're getting rid of this. And, the drugs were easy. I think the drugs are really easy, because that was more of it was associated with the party scene and all that. And when I met Trevor, I literally stopped partying, so the drug thing kind of stopped, and the smoking thing was more, which I found, I think I'd learnt once I finally did give it away that was more of a self-love thing, because I didn't love myself enough to realise that the smoking was actually hurting this this vehicle, that I've only got for this lifetime, and that, how much do I care about myself? And if I'm doing all this work over here, why can't I do that for my body? But I literally didn't associate that with my body. Then, food eventually kind of came into that as well. So it's like being more conscious of what I put in my food. So, I don't think I've had a soft drink or fast food for, 10 years maybe. And just being more conscious of that. And that's, again, it's evolving all the time, now to shopping at the markets for all of my fresh produce and stuff like that, not eating as much meat. And then people, there's some people that have just so beautifully just floated out of my kind of vortex, very naturally, and nothing ever happened, or there was no, just people just kind of come and went, and when someone left, someone replaced that person with, where I was at. I didn't have much attachment to too much either. So the other thing that happened too, which is funny, and I was thinking about this the other day, I remember going through my awakening when I was younger. So when I was about 25, I met Trevor when I was 24. So when I was 25, we started to really go in deep, and I was having lots of realizations. And what happens when you have big realizations? You want to share them with everybody, and you want to point out to everybody that you're doing this wrong, not having no awareness that nobody likes to be told what they're doing wrong, or, even if it is good for them, everybody, has their own kind of timing. And so I wanted to go and tell my family, all the things that I could see that they were doing wrong, and it literally just caused so much separation, and I couldn't understand it. And I was getting really kind of upset, but I'm trying to help you. And little did I know that, it was just, causing a lot of separation within my family. And then, so as years went on, I was learning more about allowance and, self-responsibility and love and uniqueness and timing and all of these beautiful words that I literally realized that I had been putting all of this control from and when I say control from almost like a manipulation, using the word conscious, with my family. And I was just like, I just realized one day, I was like, holy shit, I've just been trying to control from a new space that I was unaware of, coming through this facade of being conscious.
Yeah.
And that I just was like devastated. I was like, oh. So kind of just let go of trying to change or tell or I could share my own experiences, but it wasn't to change anybody or control anybody or for whatever reason. And with that happening, I just found that they all started coming back in, and just having much more beautiful relationships with my sisters and my brother and my mum, and my dad passed a little while back, but just much closer relationships in just seeing them. Even not as a brother or a sister or a mother, but seeing them as another human, or another being. And like even my mum, I had so many realizations around seeing my mum as my mum, the label of mum, where it was like a box. I had her in this box, and I was like, wow, I need to let her out of that box, because even I was constricting her. So it was like once I saw her as another lady who was having the same experience as I was, the relationship shifted and changed, and we started talking about all different things, and it was so beautiful. And I have that relationship with all of my siblings now and my mum. So
nice.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to know I'm not the only one who's been down that road.
Yeah.
I'm still viewed as the unusual one out there, but anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
We're all not the same, it's like we need some crazy cats. We need some more weirdos out there. Yeah. To shake, rattle and roll things.
Join the weirdo club.
Yeah,
That's me.
love it.
All right. So, Jo, when I first thought about the idea of interviewing you, I sent you an email.
Yeah.
And I've pasted it in here, and I'm going to read to the listeners what, pretty much word for word, what I asked you, with the idea, because for those who are familiar with the podcast, I've interviewed Jo's husband, Trevor, former World and Australian Ironman Champion. And that was a very unique day for me, having him in this little room here as well for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So just for the listeners, this is what I asked. This was the thought I had, the original thought of why I wanted to talk to Jo, because she's out there helping the women of the world and the young girls of the world, and I see my task as to help the men. But I brought her in today because she's got a special angle on everything, and here's where it is. So this was my words to Jo. It says, Jo, there are not many men like Trevor, that is a world-class athlete, who's emotionally and intuitively developed. So I think you, Jo, have a very unique insight into the current upper spectrum that men currently can develop to. I'm not saying Trevor has reached the pinnacle, but he appears to be in the top percentage on the planet today of men who are intuitively developed. I do have an angle I'd like to talk with you about in the podcast, as I'm now specifically encouraging men to develop their intuition. In our modern world, intuition can have a female connotation to it. Because of that, I'd like to discuss with you what it's like from a woman's wife's perspective of living with someone who's a man's man. And by that, I mean, he's a big, tough guy. Like, if I end up in a race on the beach next to him, I'd sit there and look up at this imposing physical, I'd be like, yeah, like someone needs to trip you over. Like,
that's funny.
So he's the man's man. But yet he's very openly intuitive. The short time I spent with Trevor a year ago was amazing. The energy he put out is hard to describe, but fantastic. I feel if men could hear from you, Jo, how you view your husband's developed intuition, it may inspire men to develop this area of their lives too, instead of just developing their muscles at the gym. So what's it like to be married to someone who's intuitive like Trevor?
Well, first of all, when I did receive that email, I was so chuffed. I thought it was so beautiful that you actually even picked up on all of that, because there's so much in that email in itself, you know. But thank you for even acknowledging that, because he's a beautiful man, really and truly a beautiful man. And he's doing amazing things. Oh, look, I've never met anyone like Trev. Like we've been together for 28 years, and it hasn't been, you know, lovey-dovey, amazing. You know, we've had challenges like any relationship. But he's incredible. I don't think I've ever heard him say a bad word about anyone in his whole life.
Wow.
He sees the good in all. And even when things are really, 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 really bad, he will still find some gold in there. It's incredible. And sometimes I get really frustrated with that, because I've grown up, and this is part of my lesson as well. I've grown up with quite a pessimist attitude. And him and his family are they're optimists, you know, they see the good in all, and it's so beautiful. And it's like, it can literally shift you when you change your attitude around that. But anyway, back to your question. He teaches me every day. He challenges me all the time. So he's not, like you said, he's not the softie, but he is the softie. Like, he stands strong. So he has that beautiful masculine energy, but he also has this wonderful feminine energy about him as well. And I think that's the beautiful balance with him and I, because I think I have quite a masculine energy as well, but I also have a very feminine energy. So there's been times in our life where I've maybe had to hold the space for him, and there's been times where he's had to hold the space for me. And it's rocked back and forth throughout our whole relationship. And I think, you know, that's what's kept us in good stead, is that there is a beautiful balance there between the two of us. And he softens me with his knowingness, his intuition, his optimism, all of these beautiful aspects that are very feminine traits. He softens me, and maybe I question him in a way that might be a little harder, a little more masculine. And so we kind of, it's weird. It's like he's the female and I'm the male in the relationship. And maybe that's why it works so well, and why, you know, we just bounce off each other. And it's funny, because I've been reading a lot about this twin flame thing, and I'm not sure whether you are aware or familiar with it. Yeah. It's where it's like one soul that's been split. And because it's so funny, the more it's funny because we had this conversation this morning before I was coming here, and he said to me, I feel like we're going to another level within our relationship that's going to make us closer. And I was like, oh, wow. And I said, I feel like we're coming to another level in our relationship that's going to make us not feel separate, but it's almost like separate in a more loving way. It's like, I feel like that I'm coming into my own, and he's coming into his own, and then but we're coming together. And it is a journey of backing and supporting one another, like really backing and supporting, whether we agree with what the other is doing or not. But there's this inherent trust in each other too, that I know that he would never do anything to undermine me or to hurt me, and vice versa for me as well. So there's this trust there, that if I said to him tomorrow, I need to go to Peru, to the jungle for 6 months. I've heard there's this shaman there. I'm going to go and do ayahuasca for 6 months, and I'm going to come back, and he would be like, oh my God, go for it. That's the type of guy he is. Yeah. Anything for the higher good, you know, with anybody, even our kids. You know, we've had some, not so many varied views on Trevor and I too, we've kind of been very together, and not so much on the other two as well, because Jackie, Trevor's ex-wife's very conscious, very aware, very on the same page. We're on the same page. So we've had the same view about how we parent, and it's like that thing. Yeah, when you're in the room, my son says this to me all the time. When you're in the room, you can't smell the smell that's in the room. And then when someone else comes in, they're like, what's that smell? And it's like, oh, I've been in this room for so long that I haven't noticed that it's any different. And it's like, Trevor and my parenting is different. It's different from the conventional parenting. We give a lot of space to our kids to experience things, only because we've learned that that's how you learn. You have to give space, and you have to let the cord go and let it stretch out as far as it's going to go, and just trust that it's going to they'll come back, or they'll learn whatever they need to learn. And I think our relationship's been exactly like that. So I don't know whether I answered your question or not, but it's beautiful. I think more men need to be able to connect into that, and like allow their wife maybe to hold them for a little while. Allow that feminine energy that's so, it's about the mother, and it's about holding, and it's about nurturing, and men are allowed to let themselves off the hook, and let their wives or their partners hold them, or even their daughters. It's like, it's this beautiful energy that's coming through where we need to bounce off each other. And then for the man to be able to hold the space for the woman to come into her own. And if that means leaving the nest and finding herself, yes, do it, and do it lovingly, and support, and know that, wherever she's going is going to be better for the whole, she's not just doing it because for some silly reason, it's like,
So I guess, you probably didn't have any long-term relationships before, Trevor, but you had some relationships. So comparing some of the other relationships you had before that, and then just specifically considering Trevor's intuition, was there much comparison or none?
Absolutely. Yeah. Or none. God, it's both. Partners in the past have never talked about being intuitive, or maybe unconsciously, because I think it's in us a little bit unconsciously, but we just don't use the term.
And so the way because they were less intuitive, etc., let's say, and obviously they were younger too, and look, in my young days I certainly wasn't intuitive. But how they acted.
No, there was no care.
No.
There was no care, no thought.
No thought of others.
No, it was a me, which I think is a lot of, I don't want to say society, but, there's a lot of, and look, I was part of that too, where it was me, just want for me, what's best for me, and no care for another, and what can I get? And I was just having this conversation yesterday, actually, on one of our podcasts, that I think we're becoming, for people that are becoming more aware, or more conscious, that are feeling more of what's going on outside of them, we're realizing that we can't find the things that fulfill us outside of us anymore. Like we can't, we can have the beautiful house, the beautiful car, we can have the great job and all of that, but is it filling us up on the inside? Are we feeling fulfilled at the end of the day, or, like the phone, we're searching for something, and it's like, I'm just finding that everything that I need, I already have. I just need to get the stuff, the shit, the negative stuff out of the way to allow me to be me. I don't know how else to say that. It's instead of looking for everything outside of myself.
I can relate to that. The last couple of years, I guess, I'm sort of starting to get to that point where it's the things and the striving and the hard work. And, you know, we had our own business overseas years ago, and it was 7 days a week. You know, we had a restaurant and things like that. And yeah, it was sort of 6:30 a.m. till 9:30 p.m. 7 days a week. We lived right beside it. It was just, and just
all encompassing, isn't it?
Work. Holidays were spent thinking about it, answering emails and et cetera, and it's now it's more about trying to be.
It is, isn't it? It's like there's just, and I think that's the I'm picturing the mouse in the wheel. You know, it's like
the hamster wheel.
It's just go, and it's do. There's no just be.
And for me, I think this is another reason I'm trying to get men to develop their intuition so they can recognise that. Because it's really only since mine started to develop in the last, say, 6+ years, where I start to see and realise these things, that I'm able to even recognise it, you know, that I'm now more open to see and hear and feel and sense and know things that I didn't before. And I'm realising that, like you said, it's a load of shit, all that stuff. It's just, it's not important. It's not what we're really here to do. It's a distraction from...
Distraction, great word.
Yeah, you know, just like our phones are now. I'm not against phones because there's a lot of great technology. They help us do a lot more. Like, I use them all the time too. But... yeah, like these things, it's the double-edged sword that comes. It's got the great tool to help you in an amazing way. But very distracting as well. So like it gives you a lot of time because, you know, we've got 4 adult sons who are very tech savvy, etc., constantly teaching mum and dad things all the time. And here, use this, use that, and this will save you time and make you more efficient. And it does. But it has this distraction beside it to chew up all the time you just saved. So,
well, is it controlling you, or are you in control of it? You know, and I think that's the one question you have to ask yourself with all of those things, because like you said, they are beneficial, and they're making things faster for us, you know, so we can spend more time with just being. But I think the world's evolving so quickly. Right now, it's like, you know, what we've learnt and what technology has evolved in the past, even like 5 years, is just incredible when you stretch back over the last 100 years. It's like, and I think it's getting faster and faster. And, you know, we're hooking into a lot more, you know, ethereal forms of technology, which will blow our minds, I think, in the next few years. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. My sister sent a message. She sent something through the other day to me, and then she sort of put a comment. She goes, I just wish life was how it used to be 50 years ago. And I didn't reply because I thought, well, you know, like, I'm a bit older than you. And I say to my boys, you know, when I was in my 20s compared to now, life was so boring compared to now. Like, life is so exciting right now. And I know there's all sorts of crap. You know, some people listening going, oh, Doug, there's so much crap going on in the world. Like, I just hate it. I'm so nervous. I'm scared. I get all that. But double-edged sword again. With all that comes all the awesomeness. There's just the fact that you and I can sit here and potentially have an audience of 8 billion people on the planet. And we know they're all not going to listen, but in this day and age, just with technology alone right now, at least half of those people have the ability to listen in. And it's
amazing.
The people didn't have a voice before. It was the television. You know, as I grew up, you know, we had, here in Australia, we had 3 or 4 channels, and, and that was it. You know, that's all you had. And the first thing in the morning, there was nothing on TV, so Mum would put the radio on. And it would just be the same standard things happen. You knew with what was on the radio what time of day it was, because at 7:10 in the morning, this came on for 2 minutes.
That voice, it was, you know.
It was, you know, that's all we had. And now it's just insanity with what the
distractions. And it's funny because, you know, it's such a beautiful subject because, we can go back 20 years, and I understand what you're saying, because there was no social media. There wasn't even phones around, when I was 20, I think mobile phones were just coming in. There was so much more play, but there wasn't a lot of awareness. Still, there wasn't a lot of awareness.
No.
If you were aware, you were like living as a hippie kind of thing.
Yeah, you were really ostracized.
Yeah. Where now, we had the time and space probably to be more aware, but we chose not to. Where now there are so many distractions, but there's so much more opportunity to be aware. And it's almost like we're being funneled into this fast-paced awareness. It's like the time is now.
Yeah.
And like you said, there'll be people out there that'll go, oh, my life's crazy. Yeah. Well, hook into that craziness and just change your perspective just a tiny little bit and start to look at it like everything's happening for you, not to you.
Yeah.
And it could become exciting, We have one life. We're here for this short amount of time. And I'm just so incredibly gracious to be here now living through this.
Absolutely.
And even the last 2 years, although it was chaotic, I'm so grateful for it because it's literally turned the world upside down.
Yep.
And it's brought about the shit and it's brought about the negativity, but at least we can see it and look at it now, and we can choose, well, how do we want to play? And I'm excited for it.
My wife, she watches she had a back injury 10 months ago, and so she was literally, off work for months and things like that. She started watching all these YouTube channels of all these homesteaders in Alaska and North America and in Portugal, and they've all just started doing it since COVID.
Yeah.
And they're now out, and for the first time, and they've no experience at it. They're living off the grid. They're growing most of their own food. They're preserving food. And she's watching all these shows and, how they do all this sort of stuff. And
how amazing.
It's just like that stuff wasn't happening 5 years ago. If you were doing that 5 years ago, you were an extreme hippie nutter.
You're a prepper.
Yeah, exactly.
End of world prepper.
And you probably had, everyone perceived you probably had 20 guns and things, and a truckload of ammunition. You would perceive that way, whereas now
that's normal.
It's just it's just people are doing that sort of thing, and it's a super exciting time to be alive. It's and the changes and the technology and used the right way, it's here to help us and benefit us. So I guess my last question for you is, and you sort of probably answered a little bit already, but where to from here with Jo? You've got the Sacred Sister program, and then you started the podcast. Where are you headed from here?
Okay, so I that's a great question too, because I've learnt to that there's you can set goals and you can have amazing intentions and all that, but I like to try and keep it very much in the moment these days. Because I've noticed that, and talking about the intuition thing, there's a flow with intuition when you can hook into your intuition, when you really start to listen to it, and when it tells you to go somewhere or do something, things open up. And that's what's been happening for me lately, especially since doing the podcast too. A lot of activations have been happening and meeting new people and new things. And I'm finding that I'm shifting a lot. I'm not kind of focused on the one thing. Like I used to, once upon a time, if I found someone that I really liked on YouTube, I would just follow that person for a long time. I'm finding that now I can follow one person, then within a month, I'm like, oh, I'm not sure whether I agree with that anymore. So I'm feeling like that I'm moving at a really fast rate. But yeah, Sacred Sister is flying. I'm coming into probably my busiest time of year, which is the next 6 months. So I've been actually changing a little bit with that as well. Just finding that there has been some small things and communication that needs to change in that, just around the frequency that communication has as well. So that's been a beautiful little kind of I don't know, I keep going to say synchronicity, but
because I suppose the girls, like your audience is changing too.
All the time.
Their mindset's different now than it was 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years
Absolutely.
ago. They're a lot more street savvy, and
they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you really want to kind of knock a little harder, because it's like you can, there's distraction, the distraction's so potent that you want to bring them back. It's like that grounding. I want to ground them a little bit more and just say, hey, it's not over here, it's in here. It's what they know, because they inherently know it anyway. I think it's going back to what we said at the start. When you're doing something mean or wrong. We know we are doing something mean and wrong. And I try and instill that in the girls. If you know that you're about to say something to another girl that is not right, check in with yourself. How does it feel? So more around Sacred Sister. But for myself personally, I'm kind of just floating at the moment, which I've been enjoying, because I have been one of those people that does. And Trev's really big on camping at the moment, and has been for the last few years. So we are getting away a lot in the rooftop tent and grounding, and just getting into nature, and spending as much time away from the distractions, and filling the cup in that way. And I think that's more of what we're coming into as well, getting away from the busyness of life and getting out into nature, which is just, coming out here today, it's so beautiful. And you realise how integral that is, just for staying in the moment, keeping the intuition flowing, filling the cup, and just feeling better about myself.
Interesting to say that filling the cups, and I guess the benefit there is if your cup's full all the time, you've always got something to help someone else. And I guess, considering what you said earlier, like giving in a way that's very gentle, rather than telling them what. I started doing this months ago. You should be doing it too.
Yes.
But just maybe that hug, that smile.
Absolutely, the small things.
You've got some energy to impart, and they feel better. After.
And I also have grandchildren now, which I just love being at. They are the biggest teachers. And they keep you in the moment, and it's like, they want to play, and I'm finding that play is huge even for adults. It's like it lights a fire inside of you, and you there's so much. I've never laughed so much that I have in the last 3 years, but they're just divine little beings that are, and they're coming through just knowing so much, and they just keep you right on track. And I've been spending a lot of time with the three of them, and I love them so much. And that's been a big part of mine and Trev's life recently too.
Awesome. School holidays now, so last week we had our 2 grandchildren for 4 or 5 days. It's wonderful.
It's beautiful. How lucky are we?
Yes. Excellent. All right, Jo, that's been an amazing insight into your life, and particularly because I always hear you ask that question, where did your awakening begin? And I just have always been curious with you, and so I'm glad we've covered that question, plus the other things, and the angle of what it's like living with Trevor. And as you say, like, I've never come across anyone I felt that's intuitive like he is as a man. And like over a year ago, to spend 2 hours with him, like just one-on-one, like listening to him, just like, I said to him at the end, I said, man, because, there's lots of different types of intuition, and one of them is you feel things in your body. And I'm like, while I was getting buzzes and all sorts of things, and the whole time I'm like, like, it's just crazy being around you, man.
It's like he ignites things in people, and he creates a space, and it's like, a lot of the time I say to him, do you think you're channeling? Because like you can ask him something and he's just so quick with the knowledge. And I'm like, where does that come from? And he'll be like, well, it just comes in,
That cognizance. It's just that inner knowing, that clear knowing. Absolutely.
No, he's doing some really amazing things at the moment with some big corporations. Like we've kind of been pushing each other to not dilute what he knows, that people are ready for it, and, be able to steer people into that area, because I think people actually want to kind of open up more and be more connected.
Well, if the corporations were smart enough to take someone like
Yeah,
him on
yeah.
as like one of their trainers for some of their executives, etc., they'd really go ahead in leaps and bounds.
Yeah, that's what he's doing. So it's very exciting. Yeah,
awesome.
Look out, world.
Yeah, because he does do coaching and stuff.
Yeah, that's his role now. Yeah,
Yeah.
he does a lot of corporate coaching,
Excellent.
CEOs and stuff like that.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for your time today. It's been excellent. And to all the listeners, I'm going to put in the show notes the links to Jo. You've got the website for Sacred Sister.
Yep.
Your link to the Girl Awakening podcast.
Yes.
Is there anything else we need to put in? Just those two?
That's those two. Be great.
Okay, excellent. They'll be in the show notes for everyone. And thank you, Jo.
Oh, thank you, Doug. It's been really beautiful.
Well, we're at the end of another thought-provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever-reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.